Well, hello and welcome to PM Express, and today we are looking at the new spate of media brutality, which is an absolute no-no, absolutely unacceptable, which is creeping in. But ironically, it's creeping in when collectively Ghana has attained, a new feat, an admirable feat of being a country with press freedom, or the most press freedom, #1 in Africa, 23 worldwide. That's a good thing by a long mile. How do we get here? Many countries look at us as an envy. You have likes many countries within West Africa who wish to be like us, a country where citizens are able to express their opinions freely without the fear of being arrested or locked up or being influenced and censored by government. That is a beautiful thing. But here we are just a day after that. Our own sister from multimedia goes to the MPP headquarters to get news cover, and she gets slapped by Haji Afati, who thinks that she looks like somebody who was probably selling onions with a multimedia card. Who knows? But that should end. And we're looking at how should it end. Has it come to a point where all media houses should conspire, to collaborate, to fight this thing? Is it that, well, it's them and not us? Because I think if you touch one, you've touched all of us. Should we start blacking out, certain media, political parties and say, well, if that's how you're going to treat us, you find your own newspapers, you find your own website and publish your stories because we are not interested. Some say I'm too harsh, but I'm saying that the issues going on are even more drastic. How do we go forward? How do we maintain our #1 status? What is the next phase for press freedom? That's what I'm looking at. When I come back, I have a thespian in press affairs. Joining us on the phone too is another thespian who knows a thing or two about press. When I come back, I'll introduce my guest. You don't want to go. Well, thank you very much for staying. And as I promised you, with me in the studio is Ken Ashigbey, who's the CEO of Telecom Chambers. Ken, you're welcome.
Thank you very much, Nana.
For God and country. I'm sure Ken needs no introduction, but one thing I must say that recently he's championed a lot of national cause with his own time, which I think is very admirable. So thank you.
Well, then that's our duty. That's the least we can do.
Thank you. And then joining us on the phone will be Dr. Misan Maugbe, who is the founder and CEO of Center for Media Analysis. He will join us. But Ken, I think congratulations to you, because you were a graphic, so you are the forefront of press freedom. Graphic is known to be pseudo government inclined, but I think you did your best to report it as it was. In whose axis, who was God, you didn't necessarily care.
Well, you see, Dana, the state-owned media, by the Constitution, they're supposed to be independent of the state-owned media and supposed to be insulated from the state. And I need to state without fear of favor that when I was managing director for Graphic under President Mills, and then under President Mahama, and then under President Anadu, there was no day, not a single day that the president would call you and say, change this headline, don't report this. So by the structure of our Constitution, it gives the state-owned media the power to be able to hold governments to account. If there's any case in which the state-owned media has not done its job, it's self-imposed. It's because maybe somebody wants a favor or nobody's holding anybody to it. I know that we might have suffered the situation where as eagles would have been, playing with chickens for a very long time. So we failed, sometimes we might fail to solve, but generally, we've reported it as it was. And I remember those days There was an Italian day, and we had an event at the Italian ambassador's residence. And, you know, I was accosted first by the NDC who were then in power and said, you handed the paper to the opposition and you're allowing the opposition to deal with us. I had just finished the conversation and turned, and the next person I saw was the MPP person who was also accosting me, hey, you, every time. And I just pulled him together and asked him to ask the NDC person, what did you just tell me? And MPP person, what did you say to me? So I would want to commend the media for pushing the boundaries, the state-owned media for being able to do it. There's a lot more we can do. We need to hold leadership to account, not just political leadership, but all kind of leadership. As we need to be the media needs to be the voice of the voiceless, to be able to champion causes that people who are really in need but cannot speak it. You know, currently for me, I think the challenges we face are squalor, poverty, disease, lack of knowledge. Those are the things that confront us, and they are national in nature, and we need to confront them a lot more aggressively than we've been doing. And also in pushing our frontiers. You see, it's not only sometimes for us in the state, for the state-owned media, where you have the state and not the government. It's the states that are the owners that who tend to want to control. But anywhere you go, owners of media would want to control. I hope that everybody, it's not because I'm sitting in a multimedia or haven't worked here, but knowing what happens here, Kwesichum and the publishers, the owners of these media houses, they would bring their opinions, but they allow, you know, editorial independence, and, you know, it normally would be a battle of ideas, which is the best ideas. And I pray that a lot more of the media owners will do the same, but unfortunately it's not like that. You have the tendency of politicians owning media, and all they want to do is manipulate editors, manipulate presenters for their common cause. And for me, that one is a challenge to journalists. You know, you can't be a journalist worth your salt and allow any section of the public to control your thought. At the end of the day, when we live here in 100 years, the question will be asked, were you a good managing director when you had Graphic? It won't be asked which party you belong to, which old school you belong to. You know what I mean? They will forget even your publisher. It would be you who will be on the line. So I call on all of you who are currently the fourth estate of the realm to realize that you are part of the realm, and you need to hold the first, the second, and the third accountable to the people, and generally everybody else. We shouldn't also allow big business to be able to control what it is that we put out, and there's a tendency for that to happen. It's important for the media to be critical, but also when we do all of that, we also need to realize that the competition is out there as a country. So when we push ourselves, when we want to be critical, we also should have national interest at heart and be able to see how do we play all of this in so far as the world economy is concerned. And that for me is what I would want to do. And then on behalf of, you know, the Telecom Chamber, I would want to wish all of you, the media, when you celebrated the Press Freedom Day, the best. You know what? For us, another angle we also push is availability of information, and it's important that we're able to extend, you know, telecommunication services everywhere, so that it's not only the ability to be able to talk, but access to also be able to participate. People in Chama, people in Edumasa, they all need to also feel part of it, and it's one of the things that we as a chamber are pushing with our members to be able to ensure that we can get technology everywhere.
Actually, my signal is weak in Edumasa. Maybe I need to.
Yes, but it's important that we talk about that.
My signal is weak. I need to come and report that it gets fixed. MTN. Please, the signal is very weak.
We'll look at that. All the telcos will make sure that you get good signal in Edumasa.
Signal is weak in Edumasa. So I've been listening to you. So we are not maxed out yet.
No. Well, there's still a lot of it to do. You know, and I look at the fact that in this day and age, people are dying from eating the feces of each other, killing us. You know what I mean? It means there's still a lot of work to do. Look at the fact that even as me and you now, we've been fighting this scourge of Galamsey. It's still going on, you know, as we speak. You know, as we speak, polythene, rubbish, you know, debt is killing us. So there's still a lot of work to do. The tendency of constantly making every issue an NDC MPP issue has to stop. You know, so most of the time we are either giving too much power to the politicians. Already the constitution gives a lot of power to them, but the media also keeps pushing that. or we allow the technocrats to go away free. I'm saying that there's no road in Ghana that has been certified by a politician. It is a colleague engineer of mine who would have certified it. Why are we allowing them to go scot-free if the roads get bad? We should call them in. So we need to start, our producers, our presenters need to start being tough in terms of who to question, not only the politicians, but the technocrats. We need to also hold their feet to the fire and ensure that they're answering the questions that they need to answer. You know, our district chief executives, what is it that they are doing? Currently, for me, one of the fights I think we need to be fighting is asking the president to hold every DCE, MCE who has Galamsey still going on. That's his failure. We should be able to sack all of these people, you know. So we need to start holding our technocrats who are supposed to act. And it's all part of being journalists. It's not just the political brouhaha that we, and a lot of the time, it's a lot of heat without the fire. You know, we need to start doing things using journalism to be able to get the change that we expect in our country, Ghana.
After all this that we have achieved, you know, #1 status in Africa, which, you know, makes me so proud, you know, gloating and gloating and gloating. When you hear that Latif's head has been cracked, when you hear that this, you know, young lady is being slapped, you know, for the most ridiculous of reasons, you know, how do you feel? I mean, where do we go from there?
Now, you see, for somebody who has managed media, you know, 2003, I was general manager of Joy FM all the way till when I was a graphic. For me, I think it's a burden on me, and my conscience is pricked. If journalists that, you know, media owners, media managers send out day in and out to go and cover stories are beaten. And this thing has happened forever. You know, for me, my lowest point in graphic was the time when one of my journalists was beaten. He was not beaten by a politician. He was beaten by a brother of a sportsman, the captain of the Black Stars. You know, and we took this case on. Unfortunately for me, it was in the courtroom when the same journalists who we were fighting for decided to abandon the case. And see, so the problem when we start looking at the assault of journalists, yes, first it is unfortunate that the only occupation where you get beaten for doing your job is journalism. And sometimes as Ghanaians, we forget that the rights that the media carry, they carry on our behalf. Because currently as we sit in this country, even when there's a flood somewhere, if there's an accident somewhere, the first places we call is not the state apparatus. It is the media houses. So if these people who are supposed to fight your cause for you are being attacked, these people who are beating these people up, even they themselves, when the state turns on them, it is the media houses they run to. So we forget that when we are beating journalists in the course of their duty, we are just cutting our tongues and thinking that we have gotten some chichinga and we're chewing. It's ourselves that we are attacking. So for me, it's important that as a nation, we start looking again at ourselves and say, this thing is terrible. What it would do is that it would, one, prevent journalists from doing the courageous things that they need to do. To yourself, at the time when you need a journalist to be able to support your cause, the journalist will not be there, you know. And so we need, as a state, we need to really look at this and ensure that anybody who attacks a journalist is dealt with severely.
Let me go to the phone and speak to Dr. Mesan Maugbe, who's the founder, CEO for Center for Media Analysis. Dr. Mesan, you're welcome.
Thank you, and good evening to your audience.
Good evening, and I'll start the same with you about you know, achieving, you know, #1 status in press freedom in Africa. That's a huge milestone and something to be proud of.
Well, yes, Ghana has come a long way, and for us to be rated on the global index on the 23rd or the 23rd position, it's a plus. But unfortunately, it seems we haven't taken into account how this index impacts positively on our global democratic image, considering the infractions that we just experienced and how journalists have been treated, maltreated, and battered against the wall by agencies that are supposed to be the watchdogs of democratic and governance dispensations in this country is rather unfortunate. We have freedom of press, but at the same time, we don't have freedom for our journalists.
Dr. Misa, do you think that media houses should now collaborate and conspire? I propose that maybe there should be an editors forum so that, they have a list of national issues, maybe from sanitation, teenage pregnancy, population, bloating, deforestation, and then maybe on a monthly basis, they all say, look, for this month, for the first hour of discussion, this is the issue to drive the nation forward. And when there's that collaboration, if one person is touched, they could then say, look, in that case, we're giving you a news block out for a month or for 6 months.
I think that would be a very wrong trajectory to go, in the sense that society cannot prescribe a blueprint against which editorial decisions can be made or should be made. Rather, journalists are supposed to operate within a free human environment where they have to decide what constitutes their editorial news values. I think the way forward, what I would recommend is that we need to start demanding what I would call political policy for protection of journalists. I think we need a policy of such a sort to be able to hold agencies accountable. I think what we just experienced in terms of the alleged assault by a politician from the NPP political party is rather unfortunate. It's not just the NPP political party, the security agencies, which we also experienced recently. And I think as the way forward, we need to appreciate the fact that freedom of the press is freedom of a nation. Any nation that hasn't given freedom to its media is not free in itself. And as the way forward, we need to respect the role. And that is why I think we haven't realized that the media itself is not the fourth estate. The media is at the center of the three estates. It is around the media that these three estates revolve, which means that the media has a very critical role to play. For instance, NPP won the election through media platforms. NPP came to power through the platform that was accorded it by media houses, media platforms that allow the NPP as a party to have its discourses being beamed across various homes, led them to win power. And you cannot win power and then turn your back against the same institution that really gave you that platform for your political exchange, for your political discourse. So it's rather unfortunate, and it doesn't even befit any political party in this country to have such elements within. And I will use this opportunity to call on the NPP as a party to distance itself from infractions against the journalists.
Hold on for me there, Doctor. Let me come to the studio. Ken, Doc has raised a lot of issues. With the one about, I'm suggesting that there's an editors forum and they churn out national issues strategically on a monthly basis. Even though Galamsey was not planned, but when we all put our eggs in the basket, it's sort of one. I mean, will that be, sort of then dictating, we're a developing nation, and therefore we must have a direction. I don't know where you stand on that.
Well, I would hope that yes, can we get an opportunity where periodically, I'm not too sure whether I can prescribe a frequency of a monthly frequency, but periodically we take a particular issue and decide that we're going to go at it, all of us, because it is when you have, laser, it's only able to cut the toughest of metal when there's focus. So if all of us, and, Galamsey has demonstrated it, that when the media decide to take something that's a national cause and do, so it's not a passive reportage anymore, but decide to push it till we see some positive change, it works. And if it is something that the media themselves voluntarily are beginning to do, it would help. Nobody can impose that, so because of the freedoms. But yes, definitely we need to look at our particular situation and be able to carve things, because the context is evolving, and so that what are the best ways of being able to resolve our issue. Because sometimes, and I agree with you when you're saying on radio that sometimes overly being competitive, it scatters our efforts and is difficult to the extent that even when journalists are attacked, if you attack a policeman anywhere globally, you find the fact that they all come together and then they are able to achieve results. Look at what happened in, was it Bogoso? How long did it take for the police to be able to find the people who've caused this? Latif's case has been standing forever. It's not been cracked yet. So if the media were also doing that, where they, you decided that immediately this thing happens, we would be able to come together and ensure that we get the perpetuated dealt with. I think that's a good idea, to be able to tackle the issues that really confront us. And sometimes some of these issues are not the ones that garner you a lot of audience. So most of the time, because all of you are fighting for the limited advertising budget that's available, everybody is trying to go around it. But if everybody, and for me the most important thing is something that should be done at free will, journalists themselves showing leadership, deciding that this is something you want to do, I believe that it could work.
And Doc also mentioned that as of now, the party hasn't disassociated itself from this individual's action. I mean, should there have been any statement by now? You
see, if you go back and you look at it empirically, it never happens. You don't see the political parties being upfront, against them. And the only reason why they do that is because the media, you allow them to do that. What have we done to politicians? What have we done to the military? What have we done to the police? Even there are times when you go to court and then it's the suspects, formally who attack journalists. There are times when it is pastors who gang up. What do we do? After a while, you find out that the same day that has happened, another media house will be giving audience to all of these people. But if it gets to a point where we decide that this is gone enough, we are not going to allow this thing to happen. Anybody who touches us, we too would use the power that we have, the constitutional power that we have, the moral power that we have, our professional power that we have to ensure that this does not continue. And that's very important. The first thing for me is that the journalists themselves, you tend to be the cause of your woes. When these issues happen, you don't find yourself even supporting it. There might be a journalist that is being beaten. Either it's out of ignorance or for lack of support. You don't even find the other media houses' camera being turned on to be able to collect evidence. So some of these things are critical things that the media needs to be championing. I've started pulling together, some lawyers to be able to support this cause. When Latif's issue came, and today, and some of the information they're giving us is very insightful, to the extent that even the ability for journalists to be able to garner evidence when these things happen, to be able to then help in prosecution, we don't know. And so there's some training that needs to be done. So media owners, collaboration with GJA, various organizations, this team of lawyers, we need to all come together and start training ourselves so that we can hold people accountable for the things that they do against us. So it's important for the journalists themselves to also start realizing the power that we have. And that power is not only directed at the concerns of others, it's also directed at the concerns of yourself. Because as Doc says, the freedom we hold it for everybody. And once that freedom goes, everything else breaks down. So we need to start using that to be able to support the core of what it is that we do, so that everybody would know. And I think for now, people should know that with the team that we're putting together, the team of lawyers that we're putting together, never again would any journalist be beating, and it will happen. And I'm happy. I think we need to be thankful to multimedia, because some of the media houses, when these issues happen, they don't follow through. But at least there's evidence to show that most of the time, multimedia, if they are not able to push the criminal one to go, we will go at the civil cases. And we also need to appeal to the judges. There's something when these things happen and we come, you know, the fines, you know, so in civil cases, you know, what the damages that are, you know, are granted are not deterring enough. So I agree with you. When this thing happens, we expect the organizations, because you should bear in mind, you know, interestingly, Nanado has been one of the champions of freedom, the freedom of the media in the past. President Mahama, too great, also great when it comes. But we had situations during that time we did not hear anything from the party, and I'm hoping that the president would ensure, and the party leadership would ensure that, and that this person who has called, and most of the time it's an individual. You know what I mean? So we need to, you know, separate the institutions when individuals commit crimes, whether it's the police, all of them, and let the person face the full rigors of the law.
Briefly, before I go back to Doc was saying something very profound, that, you know, the NDC came to power on the back of media platforms. And so you now gain power and you turn around against the same, you know, same hand that fed you. That's a big insult to the media.
Well, you see, if you look at since the Republican started, it has been the media that has been the difference. The reason why Ghana has been an oasis of peace is the fact that every time the media focuses on the elections, we cover it before it starts, the preparation to it. We do it in such a way that it's difficult for the person who loses the election to say that he's not going to accept it. But we do all of these things for the politicians when they come back. Most of the time, even I remember the time at Joy FM, you find out that when you're reporting that this person has won and you're declaring the elections, you find out that the other part, you know, coming to attack you. But then when they get into opposition, then they rally behind the same media. So I think for too long, the media has been taken for granted, and it's about time the media woke up from that slumber and said to everybody who's been attacking us that we're not going to allow this to happen again. And I'm happy the GJ is up and doing. I hope that the NMC would also be as forceful as they ought to be, you know, and then media owners as well come together and be able to push this, because at the end of the day, it is at the very core of what holds us together as a country. We are all basking in the fact that we are first in Ghana. How did that happen? It's the journalist who has been able to push this. And so we need to ensure that the journalists who are here today needs to ensure that we don't let this thing happen, because it's sad that just after press freedom, you know, within the same week. So it means that the message has not gone down to people, and people think that when they touch a journalist, nothing would happen to them.
Dr. Masan,
yeah,
should you know, we set example of this woman, you know, as the scapegoat to, you know, deter others?
I wouldn't like to go by the word or the phrase scapegoat, but rather it is something we need to deal with as a nation. It seems to be a canker on the body of journalist protection in this country. The infractions has gone on for too long. First of all, as a society, we expect the political party as an institution to distance itself from that and to issue a statement that it's also putting certain mechanisms in place to address such situations in the future. I think that is the only way we will be able to achieve that. This is not the time to focus on that personality. The moment we do that, we tend to personalize the issues. Rather, we should move it into a new trajectory, a trajectory where we will have to look at things from the point of us as a society. What does this governance and democratic processes entail? What role has the media got to play in it? And I think many people haven't realized, as I said, the media is only respected to a larger extent when political parties are in opposition. That is when the media becomes their bedmate. And it shouldn't go on this way. The media is a central part to every democratic and discourses that we have in this country. And it is time that we respect the media. And I would rather also recommend strongly that there should be journalist protection policy from every political party in this country. And I think in collaboration with GJA and the National Media Commission, such a document could be fashioned out. And agencies need to also be sensitive. There should be a new orientation. We're talking of ethics. There should also be ethics in relation to how do I relate to a journalist. I think as people, we haven't realized that there is an ethical line we should not cross, either dealing with a journalist or dealing with your fellow Ghanaian and a fellow human being in this society. The ethics line needs to be well reoriented again among people who are supposed to know better, but they're not doing it.
Doc, but what should we in the media, I mean, what should we do with regards to ourselves? I don't know whether be more professional, find a way of protecting ourselves, but what should we do as media personnel?
Anytime we experience these type of infractions, we tend to zero in by saying that most media practitioners have not been acting professionally. I do agree that that could be one of the reasons, but then should such reason lead to the beating, the mopping up of a fellow citizen? I don't think so. So this is rather, this should open a new conversation. We need a conversation called Journalist Protection Conversation Ghana 2018. We all have to come together and nip this in the bud, for it's becoming too much. As Ken said in the studio, we have a president, both the current president and former president. They've all talked about the need for protection of the freedom of the press in this country. Our constitution is clear on that, chapter 12. So how come that we disrespect journalists in their line of duty? Without the media, there's going to be information blackness. And no society can function without information. No society can function without a platform for exchange of discourses and views and opinions. So I think we need, political parties need to be well reoriented as to who the journalist is, the role the journalist plays in the dispensation processes of our democratic themes and topics and ideologies. I think it's not getting there.
Doc, I'm going to take a quick break and I'm coming back. And when I come back, I'm going to push to both of you that don't you think a media blackout will serve as a good punishment for people, any institutions, personnel that, things of, touching a media person, we black them out. And since they need the media to propagate their news, maybe they'll sit up. I'm coming straight back. Well, we're looking at media brutality, what seems to be springing up, and it's very disgusting. Our own colleague Latif got a gun butt on his head, got a head fracture. They're still investigating. Can you imagine? It's been weeks. They're still investigating. Just a few days gone by, another lovely sister from Multimedia goes to MPP headquarters to go and report news. She gets slapped. And then all sorts of funny reasons. She was taking me a picture, this, that. I mean, all sorts of funny reasons. If these reasons were reasons why we slap, I'm sure by the time we get home, everybody would have had 10 slaps. But what I'm saying, when these things happen, should the media fraternity say, listen, either you solve this thing within 2 weeks or you find your own media house to tell your own story? Ken, is it too harsh?
Well, you see, I can tell you based on experience that when that incident happened in Graphic, and nothing seemed to be happening, I took, the editorial decision that, if that's what is going to happen, let's cut it. So Graphic, don't cover it, and there was a lot of brouhaha that why have I said we shouldn't cover Asamoah Gyan and his brother? But if Asamoah Gyan and his brother will cause the beating of a journalist, do you think we should,
safe?
Exactly. Interestingly, it was the same media fraternity that came and said, oh, why can't Ashigbey, doing all of that. But I think it's come to the time when You know, so we don't use it just lightly. But when we're expecting some, you know, a response, because most of the time, these people, they are not, it's not as if the institution sanctions it. But when the institution keeps quiet for this thing to happen, it's as much as saying that they're sanctioning it. So we need to get to the point where it's one of the options that we have, apart from ensuring that we take them on legally, you know, push for the AG to bring criminal action, ensure that we go the civil way, you know, ensure that all of us, you know, put our focuses on it to ensure something happens. If it is not happening, definitely it's not one of the things that we should shy away from. If it gets to the point which calls for that, we say that if that's what is happening, then we will also not, you know, afford you, you know, our platforms for you to be able to propagate your message. So whether it is your case that is in court, whether it's a church that is beating us, it's a political parties, the militaries, anybody who it is, you know, we just block you out. And that is where it would require the media, all of us coming, all of you coming together and deciding that for the good of the country. And this is, it's like surgery that you are going to let your children go through. It's painful, but you know that that is going to result in a cure. So if we push and we're not able to get resolution, I think it should be one of the last aces that we should play.
Dr. Masan.
Yes.
Do you also think it's you know, a good thing to look? We black you out if you you know, if your headquarters is not safe for people to come there, then you know you might as well stay there. We're not going to cover you.
I think I would take that in the context of Ken Ashigbey's professional power. Within that context of professional power, a certain form of power could be exerted on some of these institutions. We all remember the critical role Adum TV and UTV played during the 2016 election. The analysis in the local language was just very excellent, if I might say so. And that helped our democratic processes to where we are today. And for a political party to allow its premises to be used for such an infraction against journalists, it's rather uncalled for. And I think a certain level of professional power in the context of blacklisting or giving them blank pages is called for. We need to set this tone within the context of professional ethics. And I think that will go a long way to create the change that we need. So I think it's appropriate. What about if certain media houses decide not to cover NPP as a party? You can survive. No political party in our human society will ever or will be able to survive without the medium called the media. It's not going to work. So it's time, I would say that this should be the first time, but subsequently, should some of these things happen, I think there will be the need for such professional power that needs to be used.
Doc, let me stay with you, and I'll put the same question to Ken too. See, at the moment, there's this sort of understanding or convention that it looks like the media houses need the political fraternity, and so we sort of grovel and pander to them instead of vice versa. Dr. Masan, are you there?
Yeah, hello?
Yeah, I was saying that at the moment, you know, there's a convention where the media fraternity thinks it's like they need the politicians as a survival line, whereas instead of the politicians needing the media for survival, so we are rather chasing them instead of them chasing us.
I think if we should go into the theory, there's what we call the political economy that shapes news, that influences news making in every society. The media needs the politicians or political agencies, just as they also need the media. But all these relations should be done within certain ethical context in terms of how should the media engage. I think there are certain elements within certain agencies that needs to be reoriented. I think that's the way forward. It seems politicians get carried away when they find themselves in certain confinement, and that should not be the case, or to allow them to attack journalists as we are experiencing. But I think for us to say that maybe negatively Ghanaian media is depending on politicians, I wouldn't like to really assert to that or confirm that. I don't think that is what it is. Rather, there is that ethical relationship between politics and media and politics. And that should always be respected.
Let me bring Kenny here. Ken and me. Ken, I mean, there's this convention. It's not written anywhere. But we seem to honorable this, honorable that, honorable this, honor.
I think, and I would want to take, I think there's an overly dependence on partisan politics. You know, yes, it's true that political leaders, you know, run the country. So, you know, but, you know, there's the tendency that for every issue that happens, we quickly go to the politician. And there's a tendency for, you know, and that it's been the bane, maybe coming from print, I would say that. It's been the bane for print houses because, you know, the challenge is that most radio and TV stations, if there's no newspaper that has political stories in it that they can, you know, gravel around, they don't have any production. So for me, I think it is important, the time has come for journalists, producers, presenters, to realize the fact that beyond just the politicians, and most of the time it's the NDC and MPP, well, the Fourth Republic, they have ruled our country. We overly play to them. I agree with Doc where he says that it should be a symbiotic relationship. The media needs to report what the politicians say for the audiences to come, for advertisers to also come on it. Same way the politicians need the media to be able to send the messages across. But when the relationship tends to become a bit too parasitic, you know, where it is that we are overly focused on politics, and most of the time to the detriment of the more, you know, important issues that confront us as a country. So it's important for us, well, you know, talking about press freedom, to also get our journalists to also be passionate about other things, but politics. But you see, as we say all of that, we as a people, the audience too, we get the kind of media we want, because if, you know, research shows that that is what we gravitate towards, a lot of the noise, and most of the time you see it, there's a lot of, you know, acrimony in the studios, and sometimes you find the media also playing the politicians, you know, to that, you know, and the audience also coming behind that, and then advertisers also coming onto that. So in as much as we are blaming the producers and the media for that, and also the politicians, we also as audience also need to share the blame. What is it? Are we you know, watching critical you know, media? Are we listening to critical conversations? You know, are we reading critical things? Advertisers as well, where are we putting advertisers' money? Are we just putting it in a program because that is the most controversial, and that's so all of us as a nation, we need to sit back again and see where is it that we want to go, so that we can start shaping ourselves. The fact that the youth want tramadol does not mean that we should give them tramadol. You know, we as gatekeepers need to start looking at it and see what are the issues that really are confronting us as a nation. Yes, if there's an issue comes up and we need to be able to bring politicians to come and discuss, well and good. But if there's an economic issue, why don't you bring two theorists, you know, from academicians who might be coming from completely different perspectives, and let them come and argue it, so that in the end we are able to come up with solutions that even the politician can sit back and look at it and pick. Those are the things that we need, as media, we need to start doing, so that we can actually start, you know, shaping policy. We can actually start determining the course of action. As a country, I think we are constantly in campaign mode. constantly we're in campaign mode. And we as journalists need to start shaping that so that after an elections, let's get to the point where there's governance taking place. And close to the elections again, then we can go back to it again and let's say, okay, let's go and say who has the best ideas to be able to come and rule our country. But let's give the country an opportunity to be governed.
We should own our airtime a bit more?
Oh, more than so. We really need to do that. And you see, and the challenge also is because as a country, we don't do a lot of data-driven analysis. So even advertisers, you know, are not really looking into this, because I'm sure if we really looked at it, there's fatigue even setting up for, you know, audiences, and people are beginning to shift. But nobody really is looking at that. And that's why it's going to be important for media houses themselves to start looking at the things that are beginning, you know, to interest our people. And we should bear in mind, if Apple wanted to wait to see what people wanted, will not have, you know, the Apple brands, you know, neither the iPods, the iPads and all of that. They looked at it and looked at innate things that people were not voicing that they needed, but they wanted. So as media people, it's time for us to start shaping content and, you know, deciding that which are some of the critical things that people want to listen to, and be able to generate interesting content that people will come follow up. Developmental journalism, things that would shape, you know, the improvement of our society. You know, we want to be able to move the black race from where we are to the next level. What are we doing to be able to do that? And it's, you know, the saying you talk about anytime you do your radio program, when are we going to start telling our story? For too long, we ponder to it and we allow others to say our story is not being told. Whether in the media, even in film, you don't get the Ghanaian story being told. Who are going to tell it? It is difficult to do, but that is what the media needs to start doing. And then as we do that, I would also say business. Business also needs to start looking at those ones and deciding that those are the projects that they are going to fund. Those are the TV programs that they are going to fund. So that when we sit back at home and we are complaining, oh, the media, this is all they're doing, you need to ask yourself as a brand that is advertising, where are you putting your money? If you're just putting your money behind a lot of the noise, then you're as guilty as the people who are producing the noise.
Dr. Hassan, let me take a final comment from you before I let you go.
Thank you.
Just a closing comment from you, then I'll let you go.
Right. The media deserves to be respected and to be protected. For us to enjoy our democracy, we need to place the media at the center of all our engagement with the needed respect and the needed protection. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That's Dr. Mesan Maugbe, who's a founder, CEO, Center for Media Analysis. That was in there. Ken, what should we do now? Because we seem to be in a fix. We're very divided. What will bring us together to get that collective strength that we have?
Well, I think the leadership is needed. And so, well, I'm happy that I've seen the GJ begin to take a bit more aggressive stance, you know. But so we need leadership. And we need to start seeing leadership from even media owners. Because sometimes they also, because of the business side of things, you know, they shy away from this. But I hope that we'll be able to start seeing the institutions like GEBA, institutions like Print Park, you know, the managing directors of the state-owned media also coming together and deciding, forming a force that says that, you know, we are not going to allow this thing to happen, because at the end of the day, they are the people who benefit from the labor of these journalists who are beaten. You know, we need also for civil society to support, because at the end of the day, for civil society, these are the platform, the media that you need to be able to reach people. So we need to also start seeing some support. We need to get support from legal luminaries who can also help, so that when these things happen, we can also extract, you know, our pound of flesh. And one of the things that the media themselves need to do is also start seeing that once one person is touched, everybody else is touched.
Before you continue, should like every media person, you know, deduct maybe 2 cedis or 3 cedis of your pay to go into a certain fund, so that when you put the lawyers together, at least we can pay something, or if some emergency hospital bills, you can fall back. I mean, should we set up something like that? I mean, just 2, 3, 5
I think
cities.
that's something that, can be done, but you need to do it within a structure. I'm hoping that GJA can rise up to that particular into that particular space and decide that this is something that we're going to do, because it is very true. Most of the time, if you don't work for a structured organization such as graphics, such as multimedia, the desperate groups, when these things happen, most of the time you find out these journalists themselves, who most of the time media houses pretend to pay, they then are left to their own, and even their hospital bills, where's the money going to be able to do all of that? I have a journalist at Graphic who was beating up in covering a police had arrested some people. He lost his sense of smell. Wow. You know what I mean? And so a fund like that would, one, be able to fight the legal battles, that two, would be able to ensure that medical bills are covered, that would ensure that if the person can't work again, it would be good for the GJA if they will be able to rally around, even set up and, get, a fund that, has some insurance in it, so that there's a proper insurance that targets the risk that journalists are facing. But most importantly, we need to put up a preemptive show of power that would tell people that when these things happen, we would come back at you. And let me, Nana, if you allow me to just read there's some tips that on the platform, the legal platform that we had created, that was said that some of the things that journalists need to do, and it also requires all of us working together. It says that if you're a journalist and you're attacked, get witnesses that are available to take photos, take videos and audios once they sense danger. And they talk, the second one, he says, take shots during and after. And he cautions that it is the shots that would allow you to be beaten, but it is that also would provide you the evidence when this happens. And he says, if you sense danger, switch on your phone recorder and let it run. Then you also ask others to do same. One of the things I am adding is that you find out that most of the time when these things happen, they take your phone, they will smash it. So what I would recommend to any media house, and you should get your journalists to be able to get a Facebook Live or Periscope. So immediately this happens, go onto Facebook Live. Start broadcasting it live, so that by the time all of this will be said and done, you have evidence. And then Sam Saladi was talking about the fact that it is not being quick to run to the media to go and tell your story that's most important, but it's to preserve the evidence that will be required by the AG if you want to be able to prosecute criminally, and also even if you want to take civil action. So it's important. But all of this, we need to be able to do training for our journalists. So that another thing that is themselves is that when you get into a situation that is risky, how do you handle yourself? Because we cannot be martyrs, in doing our job. But I agree with Doc also to say that as a nation, we need to pay attention to the protection of journalists. This has to stop.
Ken, thank you so much for God and country. The number for Tatis Fashion, who makes my shirts, 024 366 2001, 024 366 2001. Give them a call. They just buy now clinic, but wherever you are, they will post a shirt to you. Just give them the size. But it has been a very insightful conversation for the beginning of the week. But at least we got to talk about it without censorship, without being arrested. And that's a freedom that is invaluable. What we need to do is to better it and respect for you and I who are in the media. Ken, thank you so much for coming.
Thank you very much, Nana.
Tomorrow we'll be back to do this all over again. Thank you.